Cannonball Mindset, and today I'm sitting with somebody who I have really built an amazing relationship with over the last several years. And I never even met this guy face to face until like a year into our relationship. It was like blind dating for like.
That's how you meet everyone now, I feel like.
Right?
We all become stalkers and mutual admiration society members. And then one day, if you're lucky, you see them.
It's crazy. It's crazy how that went. So I'm sitting with a co-owner, co-founder, producer extraordinaire of DoYouConvert. And if you are in the home building, home building, is that right? Home building segment.
You home builder or developer?
Yeah.
You may have heard of us.
Yeah, you know who DoYouConvert is, because you really do own the market when it comes to home building lead generation, home building, online lead sales professionals. I don't even know all the things you do. You have amazing conference itself.
No, that's it, man. Top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. If it happens online, from marketing to inside sales to sales, we help put all those pieces together for folks.
Which is crazy because 10 years ago that didn't exist.
No, not really.
There was no online sales. There was no online lead generation. And so how long have you guys been in business?
So Mike Lyon started the company 10 years ago. This is our 10th anniversary. I've been on the team as a partner since 2015. Yeah. But online sales, inside sales, for those not in home building, inside sales was really where the company started, and just all this traffic and interest and things that are happening online. And then you get what I call the digital stiff arm from a company. It's like, oh, you really want to buy this? You want to prove it? Like, fill out this really long form with lots of questions and tick boxes. Follow up with us again, because we won't follow up with you. You know, it's like the digital stiff arm to your customer of saying, you want it, you got to get through this to actually talk to a person.
Yeah. And here's what's crazy. So if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking the next 45 minutes or however long is going to be about home building and lead generation, it's not.
There's other podcasts for that.
Yeah, you follow Mike's podcast, follow your podcast. It's amazing if you want that. But that's not what this conversation is going to be about. And if that was, I don't think I'd have you on. The reason I asked you to be on and really begged you to be on is because you bring so much knowledge when it comes to self-branding, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to social media. You're just like this. And here's what's crazy. I think when I was on your podcast, I think I referred to you as this person.
Oh, yeah. That was so cool. Can you do it again?
Yeah. Like Mike Lyons and is a larger than life kind of out front kind of character, right? I don't know the guy well. I maybe have talked to him twice in my life, but you have an image of this guy, Mike Lyons. He's the pretty boy that is out front. He'd probably get mad at me for saying that, right? But he's a boy that's out front and he's a smart guy. He's really charismatic. But you're like the Johnny Ives. He's like the Steve Jobs. You're like the Johnny Ives. You're the creator, it seems. Is that far from the truth there? I'm saying, I
don't know about creator. I look at it as lead and support. And I've always considered myself a fantastic number two to whatever organization I've been a part of. I'm not as good at breaking the vision and looking forward, historically speaking, in terms of where a company or product or something needs to move in the next 5, 10, making those big swings. Yeah. But if the big swing is explained to me, I can break it apart into the natural steps that will get you there. And, a lot of the things that we'll probably talk about over the next 20, 30, 40 minutes, it's going to stand on the shoulder of giants. So I always like to give full and complete credit when I can to say, Seth Godin and Gary Vaynerchuk, kind of a hybrid of those two is a lot of my belief systems. Yeah. And one of the things that Gary says often, which I use as well, is marketing is all about solving problems, oftentimes solving problems for sales and customers. But it's at the end of the day, it's just reverse engineering from the viewpoint of a customer for everyone else. And there's very few people who can break those pieces apart. Mike's a fantastic at saying, this is where I want to go. This is how we need to help people. And then kind of like a Steve Jobs and a Johnny Ives relationship, it is, okay, let me actually put skin on those bones and figure out how we actually accomplish that over time.
Yeah. And since you put it really well, because that's exactly how I see it. And to your point, obviously I know Gary, and I've spent some time in their office. Actually, a lot of time in their office. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. And what you see is Gary is the same way. The difference is Gary doesn't have one Johnny Ives. He has like 37 of them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he has this vision. I've been there. I've been in meetings with him where he says something, and he's got people like D-Rock, who is amazing.
Who I have to say this. I take somewhat credit that D-Rock even exists. I want to talk about that at some point. But
all right, so let's get to that. Hold on a second. So he has D-Rock. He has this guy Jason Moreno. He's got like 30 of these guys, these people who create the vision. Like he has the vision, and then somehow they take it from his brain and what he's saying and make it happen. And it's amazing. Like I can tell you, I was talking to a friend of mine that works there, Jason, and we were talking about filters on like Snapchat or something. I forget what it was. Not Snapchat, on Instagram story. You know how when you do an Instagram story, you can put like all these cool little things in the Instagram story.
Yeah.
And so if you try, like I was at his office and I was taking a selfie with me and Gary. And then I like searched Gary V in this filter category. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, all these little GIFs. So that what they're called, GIFs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All these little GIFs pop up. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing. He's like, Chad, you can do that. Like,
yeah, just upload your GIF.
10 minutes. And I'm like, what? This isn't just for the Gary V's of the world. He said, Chad, don't you listen to what Gary says? The internet is the greatest equalizer in the world. And if you have the right support behind you and the people that know how to do what you're visioning, mm-hmm. you'll get to where Gary is really, really fast.
Yeah.
You just got to surround yourself with those type of people.
That's why I love Seth Godin's book, Linchpin, so much, is it really breaks down how, it used to take factories and all this scale and resources, and now you've got all that in your palm or in a laptop. You have literally no excuse, because if you can envision it, there's access to a tool at incredibly low cost to make it happen. Or oftentimes in today's world, it's completely free. So
it was just my daughter last night. She comes down. I was on calls, and I finished on my call, and I'm sitting at my desk, but one of my daughters comes down and she goes, Dad, I have a great idea. And I said, okay, what's the idea? And I'm thinking she's going to say, like, we should go to Burritos or something, right?
That's a good idea.
She was packing for her, we're going on vacation, she's packing for a trip. And she goes, I was packing suntan lotion. And I thought, how cool would it be to have a suntan lotion, she's 14, something in the suntan lotion that you can literally roll on yourself. So you're not spraying, you're not getting on your hands, almost like a paint roller. Yeah. That fences suntan lotion. Now she's gonna get mad at me because she told me not to tell anybody that. And I said, yeah, it'd be great. And we talked about it for a couple minutes. I went up a couple hours later, and she had done she's 14, done all this research online, and had already started like drawing conceptualized pictures of what it would look like and how to invent something. Like she said, I literally Googled, how do I invent something? Mm-hmm. And she had all this information laid out. Like, there is no real excuse or reason that you can't be successful in this life, financially or obviously emotionally. I'm a big emotional guy, but because the resources are so readily available.
Yeah, it's either fear or laziness when what it boils down to, and rapid prototyping, which is basically what your daughter did. Is she, quickly went through and figured. And people ask me that all the time, Kevin, how did you learn all the digital stuff that you do in marketing day to day? And you always seem like you're coming up with new things. How did you learn that? They always want to know what like secret resource I listen to. And it's like, I think stealing from other industries is great. That's probably one of them. But the other is just Google and YouTube and watching how it works. If you really want to make it happen.
Yeah. Somebody, I don't know if I read it. Somebody told me that there's so many videos on YouTube right now that if you started watching them from the moment you were born until the moment you died, at the average age of 80 years old, or whatever the age was, and you watch them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you wouldn't get to 1/2 of the videos on YouTube.
And so, like, the amount of content online, that's one that you hear people talk a lot about. I had a similar but different, just in terms of how fast everything does change. Yeah. Did you know that this year, apparently, more people will play golf at Topgolf than will play actual rounds of golf in the United States?
Wow. Come on.
And that's just another non-digital example of, right? that is a huge shift. Shifts and changes are always happening.
Yeah,
I
love
just got to
Top
keep
Golf.
up.
It's like one of my favorite things in the world. We don't have one within a 45-minute drive of where I live, but it's awesome. And so with that being said, how do you, so let's get into your specialty, your area. And so you are a marketing genius, marketing.
Ugh.
That's your forte. Was that a fair statement?
I love marketing, and I'm also a consumer, and I love the psychology part of it, especially. I'm always weary of the term genius or guru or that kind of stuff because no one has all the answers, and that's one thing that the people I work with know. I am not a real like you must do this. Yeah, there's a lot. I really do believe that being a good marketer, it's like a choose your own adventure book. It's understanding that you remember those from the 80s, or late 70s, right? If I go to page 20, if I make that choice, I need to know what are the potential outcomes, both positive and negative, and then make that decision. Or should I turn to page 15 and play it safe and know that the potential in both realms is narrower, but I'm safe, right? And so I think as we talk through today, just don't be surprised if there is a lot of shades of gray, because I think that's the real world. There's very few black and white. Everyone must do this. Everyone must do that.
I live in the shades of gray. I think maybe that's the reason we relate so much, is because I just don't believe there's one way to do something. And I also don't believe that it's my way always works. My way works for me sometimes. So if it only works for me sometimes, it's not going to work for you more than that. Well, maybe it will, but it's understanding that. And so,
well, and sometimes it's not the person, it's what the outcome is you're looking for. Then a tangible marketing specific example is these folks who every day have in their calendar to try to connect, send out 50 LinkedIn connection requests.
Yeah.
Just randomly. That is their strategy, and the outcome is simply to be known. They don't have a strategy of what they want to be known for other than a jerk who just reaches out to everyone out of complete self-interest.
Yeah.
For a very small percentage of the population, that will work if their goal is simply to, have the most connections, to be minimally known by as many people as possible. If that's your goal, great, then do that. But that's probably not what most of those people doing that really want at the end of the day.
I agree with that. And that leads me to a great question. I find I'm trying to, and I see people trying to build their social media platform. Mm-hmm. And I've been spammed or emailed or LinkedIn more times than I can honestly remember about people that say, I can take your Instagram following, which right now I think I have 975 followers, which I think I've had in the 950 to 975 last year. I don't think I've grown more than 25. I don't think I've dropped more than 25. And they're saying, hey, pay us money and we will take your Instagram followers, your Facebook followers from 900 to 300,000 in a week.
Yeah.
Within a week, right?
Yeah.
Pay us X amount of dollars, and it's not even expensive. It's like pay us $1,000. $1,000 is a lot of money, but $1,000, and we'll boost your thing. Why is that? And for me, I have resisted it. I have not.
Good job.
That's all to me.
Do it.
Every time I think about it, it's all ego, right? I'm just trying to get numbers so I can say I have numbers, but those people aren't real. Maybe they're real people, but they're not real followers.
Probably not real people. Let's be honest.
Why is that a negative? And what does that tell you about? So in your opinion, not defend us.
Well, again, we're just going to keep talking about these same two guys probably, but you got to be in it for the long game. And I'll make it very personal first before I talk kind of bigger picture. The Market Proof Marketing podcast that we started a little over a year ago is, in my eyes, more successful than I ever thought it would be. And any given average episode, 350 to 450 downloads. Yeah. That's it. And that still blows my mind that there's that many people in such a niche focus of new home marketing. We might have Chad on to talk, but we're going to talk about your viewpoints on marketing, et cetera, right? So I can't imagine that there's really 350 people, the lower end of that range, that actually even truly want to be the best marketer they can be, want to move, want to get better in an industry as small as I live and breathe in, right? And so there's always that temptation of wanting to appear bigger, more important. I've arrived faster and take the shortcut. The very specific example in this case is you're paying for a fake amount of attention that then as you continue to go out, if Gary took that approach, which I doubt he ever has,
Right.
very, very strongly doubt. Every time he goes to promote a new resource on whatever platform he would have bought those fake followers, he now is paying money for those fake accounts to see it. It's literally it's stealing from your future self every time you want to get the message out, which all social media is going to continue to transition to. If you want mass exposure, give us your checkbook. And so imagine having to go back and undo those 300,000 likes and figure out who's real and who's not. And that's why, again, very specifically, every time someone tries to connect to my company or the podcast Facebook group or anything we do, I look and see who you are. Are you real? Are you connected to our industry? Is this in any way relevant? Or are you just some guy from the middle of Ukraine who created an account 5 minutes ago and you don't belong here, right? And so I think there's actually greater power in keeping your message somewhat narrow to who those right people are. Now, in your case, as a broader reach, that can be harder to define.
Yeah.
But the bigger sense is, how many people can you get to go do something? If you posted on that social network, hey, please go buy this, go check this out, sign up for this. How many people are going to take action? And that's a direct relation to how much value you've given to that audience so that the law of reciprocity can kick in. And one of the things at DoYouConvert, we have never made a sales call in the history of the organization.
Wow.
Ever. And it's kind of like one of my friends, Elena Money in our industry. She talks about never spending $1 in advertising. So I understand that some people look at that and say, that's just incredibly stupid that you would never pick up the phone and make a sales call. Yeah. But I take lots of calls that end up creating sales. They're just conversations though. And there's conversations that happen over weeks, months, years where I never ask for a thing. And then they call up and say, you know what, we've been talking for so long, but can you do this for me? Can you help? And so I think the law of attraction is more important than the law of ego of I want those numbers. And there's a real financial pain if you do that too. Yeah. And let's talk about transparency too. Oh. People under the age of 30 and overnight sensation, they know that. And there are tools online that you can tell how many of a person's followers are bots or spam accounts as well. And those are only going to get more sophisticated. So,
and you lose, I think you lose. So for me, listen, I want impact.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I want real impact. And what I mean by that is I'm not doing this for my ego. Now, listen, I have an ego, but I'm not doing this for my ego. I'm not doing this so that I can say I have 300,000 followers, but I only impact 27 of them, right? I want, it's all about conversion for me. What's my conversion rate? Not what's my numbers. Like, so for me, it just comes down a slippery slope. And I always question people. So to me, like, what is your real intent? If I'm going to follow you, if I'm going to listen to you, if I'm going to learn from you, what is your intent? Is your intent for me? Or is your intent for you? And if it's for you, I can't be part of that. And I think and people will see that, right?
It's so easy to pick up on. So, I mean, if every one of your blog posts or content pieces ends with, and to do business with us, check this out, right? For a whole group of people, that's an immediate shutdown of, okay, no thanks.
Yeah, that's right. So I think, so how do you do it? So how do you build a social media following, organic social media following that is, and you listen, you can listen to Gary Vee, you can listen to Seth Godin, just almost any of these people that'll tell you, just deliver value.
Yeah.
Just deliver value.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really the best way? Just constantly keep giving value and people will eventually pick up on it?
Yes. Give value and go deeper. I think that's the only thing I would add on to that is so many pieces of content are being created today that are so surface level. And that's why I think the niche and figuring out what you're really passionate about and speaking to that specific group is so important. I mean, a really silly example. I have 4 kids under the age of 13. My oldest 2 daughters are 9 and 12, and they have a YouTube channel. And I keep explaining to them that it would be so easy to promote their channel for them to grow if they remain hyper specific. So, hey, are you a young preteen aged girl in Central Ohio? You should watch this channel. Yeah. The context of that is going to speak so directly to an initial niche audience, but then that can grow to Ohio, to the Midwest, and then you've got momentum that brings you on. So I think consistency of delivering value is part of that, but value today doesn't mean the skimmy surface level. Let me give you the 5 tips to make your life better. Like it is, let's go deep and as specific to that audience as you can get, because the context is going to help you cut through the clutter. And there is no shortage of clutter in today's world.
A lot of clutter. And that's the figuring it all out. And it's not going away. Do you see social media going away?
No, absolutely. It's adapting. It will change. The networks and platforms may adjust. I do think there is maybe a 2-3 out of 10 chance that Facebook gets broken up into some smaller, small in quotes. They're still going to be enormous companies, but if Facebook and Instagram are separated in some way, or legislation may change things, privacy concerns will change things. I do think things will become more less private or less public. There'll be less public discussion on social because we've kind of realized that we don't get along with everyone. We get along with certain kinds of people. And so I think even Mark Zuckerberg himself has realized that positioning more towards smaller group interaction, a la the Facebook groups, and I think they're going to triple down on that idea and maybe even create groups using artificial intelligence. So imagine they say, Chad, we noticed that you eat a lot of crabs and drink a lot of beer. We would like to suggest, or maybe even auto opt you into, there's this place over here you can go. We're not going to make you go there. We're not going to push notifications to you, but you're going to see this little We Love Crabs and beer group over here on the side. And if you want to go talk to those people, they're always hanging out right there. Go do it.
Yeah, I think that you're dead on with that. I think that's exactly where it's going to go. And I had lunch in California, in Los Angeles, about, I don't know, eight or 9 months ago, with the vice president for Facebook's groups. I forget what her exact title, but she was in charge of these Facebook groups, and she was basically saying they're doubling down on it, that they find so much value in these private groups, and they're going to do seminars, summits for how to build personal groups, closed, personal groups.
Now, having said all of that, we're in agreement there. They're in agreement of where they want to go. If you rely on that group on its own, you're in big trouble, because we've talked about before, Andrew, who's on our team, there was a fitness group that had like 4 million followers on Instagram. And then immediately they were kicked off. A private Facebook group of 3 million plus removed, right? And so that's why you see people like Gary Vee and others transitioning into things like private text platforms where, hey, I want your cell phone. So that's the next step. But once you develop a following, is figuring out how giving value and not asking consistently in a sales-oriented mode all the time. How do I transition it from being in these public platforms to my own private group and network that if it explodes, goes away, gets hacked by Russians tomorrow, I still can carry on and not have to find my tribe all over again.
That's great advice. So how important is your personal brand in all this? And does everybody have a personal brand? I mean, I'm not talking about the sales leaders or the thought leaders. I'm talking about every human being. Do they have a brand, and how important is that brand?
Yeah. Seth describes a brand, and I agree with him. It's the sum of all interactions with a company. You translate that to a person. Of course you have a brand. It's simply the impression, the branding impression of what you are, who and what you believe in, how you conduct yourself, the way you treat people, all those things. And that's why the why in Simon's talk, TED Talk, and subsequent book is so important. If more people understand that my why is that I want people when I die to say he was generous with his time, energy, and resources. That's it. That's all I want people to remember of Kevin Oakley when Kevin Oakley is gone. And certainly, the hierarchy of needs, I've got to have enough money to feed my kids and all those other things. But after all that is taken care of, the most important thing to me is that is what's going to be known. Then the rest starts to fall into place. When someone says, and there's anyone listening should search for Adobe marketing commercials on YouTube. Most of them are made in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, but there's this like, hey guy, you want to buy some likes? And he's talking to the marketer. He's like, it's like he's selling drugs, but you want some likes? When you start putting things through that lens, you're like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So you gotta have that bigger why. And I think especially in today's world, you cannot be afraid if you're trying to build a personal brand to be very clear about that why. I mean,
it's the driver, right? Because it does shift through the clutter. This is the North Star for me. And while I may go left and I may go right, I'm still going towards that North Star. If I don't have that, I will always end up, I'll always end up somewhere if I don't know where I want to go. Like I'll just wander aimlessly, I'll end up somewhere, but it may not be where you want to be, right?
Yeah, it can still lead, and this is a big trap. And what I talked about, the only talk I've ever given not about marketing, I think ever, was what happens if life takes you where it does and you're incredibly successful, but you're not fulfilled or it doesn't meet your why. That's, I think, one of the biggest trap of people who do hustle and put in the work and have the results, and then their career kind of grows around them. And all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, okay, I've got all this money. I've got all this respect. I have tons of followers, likes, whatever. But I didn't plan it. And so now I feel like I'm riding a wave that I didn't know I was on. Yeah. And if I leave that, holy crap, what does that mean? Because now I'm starting over. People will look like I'm scared or fearful of why I'm leaving. But it's, in all things, you should have a plan and a strategy, because you may not like where you end up if you don't.
I can't imagine creating something, not knowing the recipe of how I created it, and then losing it. Because then you're going to search your whole life, try to recreate that recipe. And I think that's the worst kind of
that is huge. And actually, if you can't define that recipe, sometimes people will ask us, hey, how do we know when it's time to start our own business? Like you and Mike started your own things. You took leaps at some point. How did you know? I knew because I had multiple points of success and I could define that recipe well enough that I had a sense of what had caused that success. If you can't do that, you might not want to jump yet, because without having that historical reference point of, I've tackled similar problems over and over again and have come out successful many times. Still doesn't mean you're going to do it perfectly, but I think that's one thing. I want to go back to the personal brand thing a second, because I think if you rewound back 10 or 15 years ago, the concept of speaking clearly what your personal why is would be more foreign. I don't have full context or research to know that, but I feel like if in a boardroom or somewhere, someone like you or I came in and said, my purpose is to be known as generous with his time, energy, and resources. Yeah. People would be like, who cares? Aren't you here to like make our company more? And again, the level of transparency that today's consumer and soon to be leaders and CEOs of companies, they get that because they have their own why that they love to speak on social media and everywhere else all the time.
Yeah. Oh, trust me. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that listen, I've been accused of being too rah-rah, too emotional, too motivational, when what companies really want is just bottom line profit.
And there are those companies.
I agree. I do agree that most companies that are a for-profit company want bottom line profit. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I don't believe that most companies want that more than they want impact. What they want is impact. What the result, what their why is impact. Their result is the profit. And sometimes we have to help them remember that.
For sure. And one of the companies that we partner with right now, conservatively, I think we'll help them sell $400 million or more above and beyond what they did the previous year. That will not excite me. I'm sure it'll be exciting to them. That will not nearly be as exciting to me as knowing that I've personally helped someone at a much smaller organization self-develop and learn how to self-teach and self-coach. And as you know, you defined on our podcast, how you approach coaching and training as full 360, like watching that development in another human being is infinitely more rewarding. And so again, if you have that personal brand, that personal mission, you self-correct without having to think about it. Like, I'll still do that because I can, and they find value in it, but I better make sure I have enough of those other things in my world, or again, you'll wake up one day and you're like, this isn't fun like it used to be.
Yeah, it's so great. I was with a client on Tuesday of this week, and we were in a board as an executive team, leadership team, And I said, and we were talking about numbers and where we were, how many sales, how many homes, how many, we were going through all the analytics. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, how much impact have you had this year? And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, how many homes have you sold? And I got up on the whiteboard and I said, okay, how many homes have you sold? And they said, we've sold 240 so far, something like that, right? I forget the number. I said, okay. I said, so that's 240. I said, what's the average family size of people that bought those homes? I don't know, 3 or 4, right? I said, all right, let's multiply this by 4. I said, how many trades, how many vendors, how many people work in those homes? Well, we have, on average, we have probably 35 to 50 trades in a home. I say, okay. And there's employees, how many family members they have? 4, okay. And we did all the math. I said, so because you sold a home, you marketed, you sold a home, you impacted those 250 homes, you've impacted, we did the math, and I want to say it was like 12,000, 15,000, some crazy number, right? And I said, so because you sold a home, because you came up with a product, you were able to improve one life, you improved the lives of 15,000 people. You had a direct impact on the lives of 15,000 people. And when you start gauging your brand and your success and your why based on that, it's much more fulfilling for the average human being than it is, I made, $2 a share.
Yeah.
Now that's important. That's important because that helps us grow. But
sure.
this is gonna fulfill you. This is going to line your pockets.
The way a lot of the folks that I know at Zillow talk about it is keep the lights on. You got to keep the lights on for sure.
But,
I mean, on a regular basis, my wife is like, why are you going into your office for that extra 15 minutes? Or like, when's enough? And what she means is financially. And I look at her dead in the eye. I'm like, oh, we have enough. Like, that's not why I'm doing any of this. It is because of that generous factor of, I know I can help. And I agree with you completely that the 15,000 number is cool, but it's harder to tell an emotional story about the 15, right? The emotional story, the thing that really is going to drive you is Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, no
right.
Problem.
And that's, I think, the thing that a lot of people miss too is the law of big numbers, as Seth Godin talks about it, is they're incredibly sexy and they almost always are meaningless. But the real meaning is the individuals. I can count on one hand the number of people now thankfully I would say on 2 hands, the number of people that I've coached or interacted with and helped to develop. At the end of the day, it's those 9 or 10 people that are the things that really make me want to get up early, stay out late and get things done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that it's not always when we talk about brand, if you don't know what your brand is, if you don't develop your brand, it doesn't mean you don't have one. It just means that somebody else is creating it for you.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is people perceive, like, listen, I have a brand and my brand is what people perceive me to be, right? Now I have to develop my own brand, and I live my life according to what I want my brand to be. And a lot of it is guided by morals and values. It's guided by my belief system, and it's not going to resonate with everybody, just like Starbucks doesn't resonate with everybody, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't create your brand, if you don't have a clear sense of your why and your vision, then other people are left to create their brand for you. And now you control. You have a brand. The question is, are you impacting your brand in the way you want or not? Is that a fair assessment?
It's absolutely fair and completely true. The plus one there is, while you still have to remain authentic.
Correct.
So you can filter and you can curate and create a brand. And that is significantly different than being disingenuous and creating a brand, right? So people who are completely different on stage, off stage, in person, not in person, that will not work over time. You will become exhausted. You're literally the person gripping onto the edge of the cliff, and just by sheer will, you're like, I'm going to create this persona. Yeah. That fake it till you make it thing, in that sense, I think is completely stupid. Curating, now that's just smart, right? Should I make this post? Is this helping people understand who I want to be and aspire to be genuinely? That's just smart. Like, don't make that stupid post.
Yep, that's right.
But that's completely different than being disingenuous and putting things out there on a consistent basis that just aren't you. That's tiring, and you see people implode.
Oh yeah, one of my
short order.
one of my good friends is a guy named Jesse Itzler. He's an amazing human being. He started Marquis Jet, sold to Warren Buffett, started Zico Coconut Water, sold to the Coke. He's worth, I don't know, probably $500 million. He's married to Sarah Blakely, who owns a company called Spanx. He's an amazing human being. He puts on a program called Build Your Life Resume Program where I met him. And I asked him once, I said, how do you manage? He's got all these companies that he owns. He's got this huge online platform. He's written 2 New York Times. How do you manage all of that? Like, how do you handle all of that? And he said, very simple. He said, I am the same person in every single segment of my life. Mm-hmm. With my kids, I'm the exact same way there that I am with my clients. When you see me with, I don't wear multiple faces. I'm okay with who I am. I'm constantly trying to get better. I'm constantly trying to improve. But the challenge is when we spend our life trying to fit the mold that everybody else wants us to fit, because we haven't figured out what our mold really is. When you're okay with your mold, when you're okay with your authentic self, then it becomes very easy to live your life of purpose, because it doesn't matter what
and it makes it incredibly easy for everyone else you're interacting with to know what to expect, right? I don't know if you've ever had a boss or interacted with somebody where, like, who is showing up today? Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde, right? Are we going into this meeting where he or she's going to be on my side, or they're going to be against me, right? The folks who are on constant emotional roller coasters because they're trying to be something they are not naturally, it's just exhausting for everyone else and themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I was drawn to you, and why everybody that I talk to says the same exact thing about you. Like, your brand is intact. Hey, if you need to know something, call Kevin Oakley. Right? Yeah. If you need help on something, call Kevin Oakley. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you're looking for an online lead generation company. It doesn't matter if you're looking for a marketing partner. I reached out to you and I said, hey, Kevin, we barely knew each other at that point. I said, Kevin, listen, I follow you on social media, and your memes, is that right?
Yeah. You got it.
Voiceover are awesome. Can you shed light on how you do it, or send me in the right direction? And within 5 minutes, you sent me an online video tutorial of you showing me how to do it. There was no, well, Chad, sure, set up a call. It'll cost you $375 an hour, or.
Right. So here's what I love about that story, even more than if I had done it. That was actually Andrew, who's on our team.
Oh. Okay.
So what's awesome, though, is it talks to, again, who do you surround yourself with, and how do they mirror your behavior? Because I would have done the same thing if you asked me. Yeah. But you asked Andrew, who's on our team, and he did the same thing, because that's what we want everyone to take the extra 10 to 15 minutes that other people see as waste, and create value for other people. And if you do that enough, long enough, it always comes back. And when I talk to someone, one of the things that DoYouConvert that we've always said from the beginning is that we do not make money off of recommendations. So typical agency models, it's like a stockbroker. You can't always fully trust them, because you're like, okay, well, how are they getting their back scratched on the other end? Yeah. And it's only by staying unbiased that you can do that. If you've got financial things, even if you are being genuine, people are going to question. And so half the time when I talk to people, it's, hey, yeah, you should not pay us. It doesn't make any sense for you to do that. Go do that other thing. But in a Walt Disney way, because have you ever seen that graphic that he made that showed, okay, we're going to create movies, and it's going to create IP, and then that is going to feed parks, which is going to feed live television, which is going to feed stories and merchandise, and how this whole thing works together. The more value we create with individuals at all level, and we, as we say, elevate the conversation around how to do marketing well, those people don't all stay at the same company. They move around, right? And almost like a virus in the positive sense, given enough time, you have all these connections that you've given small little bits of value to when they knew that there was nothing in it for you. And then they become later in a position to say, hey, you used to help me out with this. Now I have a bigger problem, and I think I probably need to pay you for this one.
Yeah. So the ROI on doing the right thing always pays.
Yeah. And there's the emotional satisfaction that comes with that, right? Someone sends you a text that you forgot you talked to them a month ago, and they're like, that tip was awesome. Yeah. Like we sold X number of houses on day one or whatever. Like, that's okay. Whatever else happened that day, like you're getting this return that you don't expect. And so it lets joy and surprise into your life again. And
what is it that for you, listen, you're a business owner, your life, your livelihood, your family's livelihood depends on you every day, right? There's no safety net. There's no, when you own your own company, when you sign the check on the front and not on the back, for me, that was the biggest thing, was understanding that every day that I wake up, if I'm not on the top of my game, I don't get to take a day off, right? I can. And what I mean by take a day off, I don't mean physically take a day off. I mean the stress, the worry, the angst, the fear of, hey, it's all on me. Does that ever go away? Does that ever like calm down? I've been doing it for 3 years and I'm still every day. No. I'm not worried. I'm not driven by fear, but there's always I got to perform today because my family is counting on me. My clients are counting on me. The people I work with are counting. The people I employ.
You really want to bust all the, which is great. I love it. I love image busting. So I drive a 2009 Honda Pilot with 140,000 miles on it. I'll probably drive that car for the next 4 or 5 years because I drive, I don't know, 5 to 15 miles a week on average. Work from home, video conference, right?
Nice.
So being fiscally responsible enough that you don't have to worry about, again, those basic things frees you up in a way to say, I am driven by that. It doesn't get better, but I'm driven by, I think, a better thing to be fearful of, which is there are more people that I can help than I can actually get to right now. Right. And so now scaling the team, growing the company, doing all those things is not about different revenue sources or how do we make more, because all those needs are met as long as we're all being fiscally responsible. I mean, we live in the United States, right? Like you got cable TV, you've got high-speed internet. I'm really just high-speed internet and a computer or whatever, right? You're set.
That's it.
So now it's all about what drives me and that fear of owning a company is, okay, what is most important and how do I leverage for the people who can't pay us? Again, there's still long-term benefit for me down the road on that too. It's not 100% altruistic, but how do I get who could never pay me, right? For them, it's got to be free, or how do we help them? Because now the problem is, as DoYouConvert and our ability to help people has become more and more known, there's been periods where we get a call every day, which for a company our size, we're not set up to bring on a new person every day or every week or sometimes every month, depending on the volume. Yeah. And so that is now the burden of, well, crap. Maybe, you don't want to stop creating helpful content to people, but when you're genuinely trying to create that content to let them help themselves, and then they're coming to you and saying, I need more. That's when, right now, that's the wrestle for me is how do we help more people who either can't afford or it's not a right fit to help, but there may not be another alternative that's good out there currently for them. Yeah. I think so it's just a shift, but it's constant. Everyone has struggles, and that sounds like a real oh, that's not a struggle, Kevin. But given my challenge of how I want to be remembered as being generous, it's like, that's some pressure.
Yeah.
I want to help people all the time. Can't.
How do I deal with it? Yeah. And I think, listen, I think you hit it right on the head. For me, it is, how do I help people that, you're right, can't afford to use us, or maybe even are too afraid to even ask, like, how do I be proactive and go find those people? Because I think there's a lot of people that want help, and they have some story in their head that's stopping them from reaching out and asking for help, or whatever it may be. It's all about impact for me. So what keeps me up at night is not financial worry, although that is a worry. It's impact worry. Like, how can I continue making an impact? And am I really the person to do this? Like, there's a lot of self-doubt that goes in there sometimes for me. It doesn't stay long.
Oh, no, the war,
deal with it and move it on.
Even Pressfield's The War of Art is something that you should read. Any expert in their field should reread every year, at least the first 2 chapters, because it really helps you understand that if you're not constantly thinking, am I really that good at what I'm doing? If you're not critical in that sense, then that's actually a bigger warning sign that you're headed down a path that's not as good for yourself and those who follow you than if you are. And there's little pieces like that book that really let you understand that, you know, I remember Garth Brooks. So I no longer listen to country music, but in high school, there was Garth Brooks, Tim McGraw phase, or I was all, and so my first concert with Garth Brooks, I was obsessed. I'll never forget, I watched him in an interview, and they said, hey, when you know, sometimes he would fly in on a helicopter, or he'd come up from the stage, he was all performance art. Like, do you ever get nervous before you go on stage? He's like, yeah, like every single time I'm going to throw up right beforehand. And then I get in it and I go. I mean, the greatest live performer in country music in that generation was nervous every single time. I'll give you another one. Someone asked Billy Graham one time, what do you want to hear when you go to heaven? He said, I want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. And then the guy cried, and I get emotionally about it. He's like, and I don't think I will. Oh, okay. What does that tell you? Right? Like, now he goes on to explain there's more context to it, but it's like, no one can be good enough, do enough, make enough. So you also have to have a good support network and friends and family, and check who you're hanging out with, because they got to keep you on track too, and keep you grounded.
Yeah, I love that. James Orsini, who was the CEO for VaynerMedia, told me that story about. I said, you know, I asked him a question. He said, the first thing I want to hear is, you know, the same Billy Graham statement. He said, I work every day to try to get there. So what was the name of the book again? Because I talked to
the War of Art.
The War of Art.
So, you know, with the Chinese guy wrote the Art of War. This is the War of Art. And it just talks about, you know, you and I are in the business. Ultimately, it's not the tactical stuff that's the hardest to do, right? You buy a new system, you put a new process in place. All it's the human beings and change and how to motivate change and collect your thoughts. And you're, you know, Chad, you're a thought leader as much as a coach at the end of the day, with all the content that you put out there and curate. Yeah. And that is intensely hard work that no one gives credit as real work. And that's why I love that book so much.
It is the hardest thing that I do every day. The calls, the podcasts, all that is one thing, but creating content that you believe is meaningful, that you believe will have an impact on somebody's life, is one, really humbling, and two, really, really hard, because you're looking at this and you're going, is this going to resonate with people? Is this real? Is this am I going to screw somebody up by doing this, right?
Yep.
All of those things are things that make me really nervous. Every day. And so there's a great book I keep on my desk called The Artist Way.
Ooh.
Unbelievable. Amazing.
I'm adding it to the Amazon list right now.
And it helps me create content. And literally, I got to get my mind right, because my mind is not right creating content, and my intent is not right. It makes it really, really, really hard. All right. So a couple more questions, and I know I want to be respectful of your time, but
all right.
I'm going to step outside of the marketing.
Okay.
2 years ago, I first met you through somebody else online, but then I started following you, and you did a mission trip.
Yeah.
Right? And created a video about your mission trip, which was unbelievable, right? And I think it's Feed the Children, or
Suffer the Children is the name of the company's or a nonprofit organization, Suffer the Children Guatemala.
That's it, Suffer the Children. A good friend of mine who owns a company called Kai's Bars. His name is Jeff Reagan. He is a huge, an unbelievable supporter in Guatemala. He's fed over 1 million people in Guatemala, and he's built,
holy cow,
3 orphanages. He's built, and he does a mission trip every year. I was going to go with him this year, but I was out of the country that week. But what is it, and why are you so involved? Because I think it's just unbelievably.
Yeah. So originally, completely selfish motivation of I have intentionally, unintentionally, consciously, unconsciously spoiled my kids.
Yeah.
Right. So it's literally that thing that we like, if so-and-so in another country, and then it was like, okay, here is an amazing opportunity that kind of came about because of social media. Someone that my wife knew in high school was now there full-time working and it was like, you know what, this will be an amazing experience for our two girls who we took with us to see all the blessings in their life that they have and make it very tangible. And then you get there, and again, you get hit with the amount of need that you see, and it is overwhelming. And everyone who's been to a third world country has a similar experience. And also, I think is interesting, is intensely personal about it. Like, no, you don't understand. Like, I've had people tell me, you don't understand how bad it is in Honduras or in this country or that country. I'm like, it's bad in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But the ability, we've always tried to give back, roughly in that 10% range of our income to the church and nonprofit and other places. But there's something intensely, as a millennial, I'm right on the edge there, born in 81, writing a check is not fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And so started, again, like we talked about, having a plan and a strategy, and like, what am I trying to accomplish here beyond getting the kids to have this good experience? Is if I'm going to engage my energy and resources and time so significantly in something, it can't just be writing a check. It's got to be getting involved in a different way, because there's another great book called The Christian Hedonist. And it just talks about, hey, if you're doing good, it's okay to feel good about it. Like, you don't need to go on top of the mountain and be like, look what I did, everybody. Aren't I so great? That was the different thing that they talked about in that's not what you want to do.
Right.
But if you are truly doing good, you don't have to make it public, but feeling good about doing good is perfectly okay.
Yeah.
And so that really spoke to me, and I've reread that book as well, the first couple of chapters every couple of years, and said, you know what, here's an opportunity for us to get involved financially and physically in an organization that we can go back to and see the change that is being made, right? Yeah. How many times have you cut a check somewhere and you're like, oh, that's cool. Then you forget you even did it 2 weeks later. But when you go down and you see the same kids who are wearing sometimes the same, hat that you brought down with you, and now it's old because it's been loved on so well, but they're still clinging to it because it's the only hat they have. It's okay to be selfish, I think, in that sense of saying, no, I'm going to get involved at a different level.
Yeah.
And I think, long-term, my 3 to 5 year goal is to be able to do that about 20 to 30% of my time, is to figure out how do we take the same principles that we teach home builders and developers at DoYouConvert. How do we help nonprofits and missions organizations do the same thing? And because they have, one thing I've experienced so far is there is way less of the, like they're not so proud to say, we're already successful, we don't need your advice. Or I know it just always surprises everyone when I share stories of someone paying you a large amount of money to come fix and change everything, right? And then you start and they're like, oh, I didn't mean that much, like not that fast, like that's off limits. And nonprofit organizations are rarely that way. And so I'm just excited to get more and more involved and start donating, percentages of time, not just percentages of money.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I agree with you. We donate a lot of money, and it's never nearly as fulfilling as when you actually get to see it. So
a really silly analogy, but I think it resonates, is people have made fun of Mark Zuckerberg and other folks for saying, like, I'm going to kill everything that I eat for the next year, right? Yeah. It's not going to make them a vegetarian, but it gives them a bigger appreciation of what it means to pick up a package of ground beef at the grocery store, right? If you're giving away money charitably on auto draft from your bank account that you never see, touch, like there's no pain there. There's no, that is a disconnection in a way. That's the same reason why, even though all this social interaction, more and more people are depressed and even committing suicide, especially young teenage girls, at a rate that is incredibly alarming, and that's spiked because we're all connected and we're all alone. And we have to be intentional about not being disconnected in all aspects of our life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I love social media, and I am not a naysayer when it comes to it, because I think there's a lot of negatives with it, but man, I believe there are so many positives that have come from social media. You can see people donate to charities. You can see that people, again, support groups, people again. But I do agree in the sense of that people are alone, and you're right. I think the idea of how do I connect with somebody? How do I really connect with them? My goal this year was on people's birthdays. You know how you see it on Facebook and you say happy birthday? Was when I see that, instead of wishing them happy birthday on Facebook, to actually let that be my reminder to pick up the phone and call them.
There you go.
I haven't converted 100%, but I'm getting close to a respectable target where I'm like, all right, I've called 50 people this year that I would have called before in my life to wish them a happy birthday. How can I find a way to connect with more people one-on-one, face-to-face, or even this is social media in some extent, but at least we're seeing face-to-face. There's more humanistic side to it so that people aren't alone.
Yeah.
All right. So last two questions. Where do people find Kevin Oakley? So we've talked about social media. We talked about hey.
Let me double check here. It's held for a long time, but yes, you can still just Google Kevin Oakley. So there you go. Just type in Kevin Oakley in Google. There was an artist who did The Little Giant that was up there for a while. There's been soccer players, but at least in the United States.
I will tell you, you will never find another Chad Sanchman in Google.
Yeah, it's a huge SEO value right there, my friend.
Good and bad. No other Chad Sanchman is coming up. All right. So first of all, thanks for coming on. You guys at DoYouConvert have set the gold standard of what companies want to be in the home building segment, if not in all.
Oh, thank you.
So I have a lot of gratitude for our relationship and what we've grown so far as our relationship. I take it has a lot of value for us.
I have one more thing to add. Sorry, it just hit me. I would be sad if I didn't do this. Is it okay if I just give out my cell phone number too so people can text me?
Yeah. You could,
so this is not a text platform. It's just my cell phone number, but 412-779-8758, 412-779-8758. Again, it's this sickness in my brain of I love when people just text me out of nowhere and say, hey, this is something that's bugging me or I'm curious about and what's going on. So
that's awesome. And again, that's eating your own dog food right there because you're making it personal, right? That's helps fulfill your overall goal. All right, last question. Here we go. When you leave this earth 30, 40, 50, 70 years from now, whatever, you're a young guy, so let's say 70 more years. What do you want your contribution to have been?
It really does come back to the same thing I said before. If I want to be generous with my energy, time, and resources. And in a broader sense, maybe that just means more love and caring of those around me. I definitely am not perfect at that, but I think there is, again, that long-term view of who did Kevin develop or help develop to their full potential, or at least send them on their way.
Awesome. Listen, if you don't know Kevin Oakley, you know him now. And to know him is to love him. To know him is to get value from him. So use him. I'm saying it's not every day you got somebody like that in your corner. So I appreciate it, Kevin, and be well.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother. Bye.